Welcome back again. KTM is in the news. So, KTM is in the news because the Austrian motorcycle giant entered self-administration. It's a debt restructuring plan, 2.9 billion euros. Okay. Self-administration in Europe, it allows them to take 90 days to reorganize and secure financing to continue operations before the company falls into insolvency. KTM AG reported $2.7 billion in liabilities, with approximately 160 creditors, with 2,380 employees affected by this situation. On the other hand, assumed liabilities of around 105 million euros to around 550 creditors and 765 employees at the time of opening of this insolvency processing. The CEO was quoted, "Over the past 3 decades, we have grown to become Europe's largest motorcycle manufacturer," said the CEO. Stefan Pierri, I don't think I pronounced his name right, my apologies. Who else is there? Royal Enfield? Who else? Who else is even close to anything their size is? No one is. KTM AG faces obligations of approximately 2,500 creditors. That's just different creditors that they owe money to. 1.3 billion euros owed to the banks. 365 million euros is owed to suppliers. 40 million euros they owe in employee salaries. This financial crisis could affect nearly 3,600 something employees. That's a lot of people who will receive their November wages and Christmas bonuses via the insolvency fund. Okay, that's good. At least the Christmas ain't going to be bad, but at the same time, I mean, if you know that you're receiving your money from the insolvency fund and obviously KTM probably had to explain these things to the employees, you know, a lot of people might have to, pinch the wallet and reduce the funds, and Christmas might not be this great this year, you know, which is not a good thing. And it gets worse. They're anticipating to lay off 500 employees by the end of the year. So before the year's out, some people are going to get layoff notices and say, "Thank you for your service." I'm not mad at KTM. This all comes from 2019. And we know what happened in 2019. Everyone got the Rona. Not everyone, people got the Rona. Pause production operations in January 2025, with working hours reduced to a single shift of operations from March in an effort to reduce inventory, which is currently at record levels. It was clear that liabilities of KTM company would reach a high level. Nevertheless, we are surprised that the liabilities are so high, said Cornelia Weisener, I did not pronounce your name right, excuse me, is an insolvency expert from Alpine Creditors Association. That is now clear that this is the largest insolvency procedures in Austria this year. There was a few other sources mentioned in this article. Here's the problem. EU states aid and insolvency laws de facto excludes liabilities. Okay, let's go back to the top. KTM went into self-administration debt restructuring plan with a recorded liabilities of a staggering 2.9 billion euros. We are now doing everything we can to save the factory and jobs. However, EU states aid and insolvency laws de facto excludes liabilities. So basically, you can't do nothing for KTM from what I'm reading right here. The EU states aid and insolvency laws de facto excludes liabilities. KTM debt crisis comes after years of aggressive expansion after Pierre Industries AG purchased Husqvarna, 50% of GasGas, and 51.1% of a controlling stake in MV Agusta, which reportedly now MV Agusta is getting spun off separately and most likely going to take their debt with them. How much that is, I still don't think it's going to affect the 3 billion euro that they have in debt in liability. Even if they remodeled every bike and built a brand new, they built brand new custom design engines for every bike of MV Agusta, new frames, new wiring harness, new production line, and a new facility, I still don't think they're going to hit 3 billion euros. They'll probably, if you did all of that with MV Agusta, and that would maybe come out to 1 billion euros. But MV Agusta doesn't have all new frames, all new wiring, all new engine, all new designs. They just don't have it. According to an Italian website, GP1, the 2023 financial year saw KTM produce 100 million euros in profit, a reduction from 281 million euros from 2022, with shares prices dropping 90% to $11.65. When they wrote that at the time of writing that, KTM has taken the steps to reduce its board members from 6 to 2. Whoa, that's amazing. KTM just reduced their board members from 6 to 2. Normally that don't happen. Not with most companies, unless you're Japanese companies, and they just do that when things are really bad. But wow, either it's a sign that they're really changing and they're trying to save the company and keep more employees on, or they're in a bigger hole than we think. KTM has pulled GasGas and Husqvarna names at a MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 competitions, with only the head KTM brand remaining in MotoGP, MotoGP2, and MotoGP3. Although development on all machines will be halted to save cost. So basically, whatever you guys got, that's what you're working with. What I said before is, they'll get a little bit of money, get the financing, and they'll be good. They're not going to sell off any of these brands. From my understanding, allegedly, that MV Agusta is getting spun off on their own. They are going to be separated. Of course, they're going to spin off MV Agusta with their debt. Which I think it was the worst decision. Yeah, I think Ferrari should have never been spun off from the Stellantis group, but it was Fiat Chrysler, Alfa Romeo. They got spun off, but they sent Ferrari off with a whole bunch of debt. They're like, okay, you want to get spun off? Take this debt with you. And that was all their debt for research, development, and anything that they could legally put onto Ferrari, they did. But Ferrari wasn't worried. They got out of that debt by paying it all off real quickly because they were making money. Now, why they got spun off? Maybe it was to get rid of some of the debt, and they know that the only company that could get rid of the debt and still stay, intact and probably not get stopped by the government, like if they went under, would be Ferrari. Because if they did that with Maserati would probably have gone bankrupt. So I think that's what really happened with Ferrari now that I think about it. But KTM, I was thinking they needed maybe a couple $100 million and they'll be good for a few more years. After reading all this, they were in way worse shape than I even assumed them to be in. I'm thinking 100 million euros, and tops 300. So 100 to some debt and liabilities, 100 million to the banks, and maybe like 50 million to employees, and another 50 just to here and there and take care of a few things to get them going for another few more years. But when you're talking about 3 billion euros basically in liabilities, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with KTM. I don't know what's going to happen to GasGas. I don't know what's going to happen to Husqvarna or even MV Agusta. Because if they are going to spin them off, if they do, allegedly, we don't know what's going to happen. But if they are going to spin them off, how are their sales doing? Their bikes are not cheap. I mean, compared to KTM, KTM is way cheaper, but MV Agusta bikes are expensive. So we'll see what's going to happen with this. This this just keeps growing larger and larger and larger. I was not expecting this.